Hey there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to be talking about the one thing that has exploded the internet over the weekend, and that's talking about Robert Downey Jr. coming back to play Dr. Doom. So in this video I thought for fun, let's talk about 5 positive points of this casting news, and let's talk about 5 negatives as well. I think it'd be fun to look at both sides of the argument for and against Robert Downey Jr. coming back to play Dr. Doom. So without further ado guys, let's get into the video, let's break it down, and let's talk about the positives and negatives of Dr. Doom being played by Robert Downey Jr. So starting off with the positive points first, let's talk about Robert Downey Jr. and his acting abilities. What he did with Tony Stark was nothing short of legendary. The guy started off the MCU, he kind of booted the whole franchise, and the nuances, the acting ability, the intricacies that he brought to Tony Stark, imagine bringing that to a Doctor Doom character would be nothing short of incredible, and a lot of people would love to see his acting abilities turned good guy into bad guy, and it would be super incredible to see on the big screen. Moving on to positive point number 2, Robert Downey Jr. coming back is going to cause untold amounts of hype and buzz. The guy for years was the face of the MCU, and for people that aren't up to date necessarily with daily kind of news on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, having Robert Downey Jr. come back is going to be a massive box office draw for the general movie-going audience, and is guaranteed to bolster that box office revenue when it comes to a Doctor Doom movie. Moving on to positive point number 3, Robert Downey Jr. playing Doctor Doom is a fresh take and a fresh spin on the character. Very different from what we see in the comics, very different from anything that we've seen before. Will the characters within the MCU recognise that Tony Stark is basically playing Doctor Doom now? Will they realise that it's the same guy, or is it a variant of Tony Stark? How is it going to work? But at the end of the day, it's still a fresh take, a unique spin that we haven't seen before, and fresh content is always a great thing. It's always a box office draw to see something different, something new and something fresh within the MCU. So that's positive point number 3. Moving on to positive point number 4, Robert Downey Jr. and the amount of experience that the guy has amassed playing Tony Stark within the MCU over the last sort of 15 years or so. This guy, like I just said, the untold amounts of experience on how Marvel runs their productions, how everything runs, would give him a smooth transition into playing Doctor Doom. So choosing Robert Downey Jr., someone who has all the experience in the world in Marvel productions, and having a possible smooth transition into another character would be a great positive point for casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. Moving on to this, the intricate kind of deep storytelling that comes with a hero character turned villain. This is one of the most compelling narratives you can have in any kind of genre of movie or storytelling. Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is one of the pillars of the MCU. He was a good guy, you know, he had a good heart, he protected people, he went on missions to save people and all that kind of good stuff. And having that kind of hero character turned into a villain, and how that's going to work, that transition period, what's it going to look like, how is it going to play out, and bringing his acting chops across from hero to villain, again, makes a fantastic point as to why this story would be so compelling. Having that kind of monolithic hero turned villain is always interesting, no matter what genre of story or movie telling we're looking at. So guys, that rounds out the 5 positive points. Now let's jump into the 5 negative points against why this casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom could potentially be a bad thing. So when it comes to our first negative point about the casting of Robert Downey Jr., let's talk about this. The fact that Robert Downey Jr. is so synonymous in the MCU with Iron Man, when audiences are watching him, you know, playing Doctor Doom in the upcoming Doomsday Avengers movie, it's going to be so jarring and so distracting for the audience. The whole time you're looking at Robert Downey Jr. on screen, all you're going to be thinking of is Iron Man, and it could potentially be immersion breaking, it could be distracting to the audiences, and it could just come off looking goofy, looking silly, and until we see it in live action, it's hard to determine whether that or not will be the fact. So when it comes to our second negative point about the casting news, potentially it links to the first negative point. Robert Downey Jr., the actor, is larger than life itself, and the fact that he's going to be playing Doctor Doom on screen is going to be very distracting. He could potentially overshadow the actual villain of Doctor Doom himself. People are just going to be seeing Robert Downey Jr. or potentially just seeing Tony Stark, one of the two, which kind of links into the previous negative point. So it could be jarring, could be distracting, and again, very immersion breaking for the audience. So moving on to the third negative point about Robert Downey Jr.'s casting. The fact that he used to play Iron Man, it could be very confusing for everyday audience when it comes to the MCU. It could be very confusing when it comes to continuity. People are going to be confused about, you know, his character died as Tony Stark, yet he's back, he's playing Doctor Doom. Is he a variant of Tony Stark? Is he a completely different, completely different person, but he just looks like Tony Stark? I mean, how are the other characters going to interact with him, knowing that he looks exactly what Tony Stark used to look like? And so it's going to be confusing for the audience watching it, the continuity, but not just that, the other characters within the MCU interacting with him, knowing that he looks exactly like Tony Stark. Are they going to pick up on that, or are they going to act as though they've never seen him before? How is it going to work? And that is a negative point, because we just think that's going to be very confusing continuity-wise in and outside of the screen. So, on to negative point number 4. Is this a sign that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is fresh out of ideas, and the only way it can survive is to bring back Robert Downey Jr. and potentially Chris Evans, Captain America, within the future? And this is not a good sign, it's not a good idea. You know, it could cause backlash in the future if this Doctor Doom character comes off looking goofy and immersion breaking to the audience. Is it just a gimmick, just to continue the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when it seems to have kind of flatlined? In recent years, their kind of Disney Plus output has been lackluster. Their movies haven't done so well in the multiverse saga, and it seems like Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Doctor Doom is kind of their emergency kind of breaker switch, if you like. They've run out of ideas, they don't know what else to do, and this is a very, very negative sign for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so this moves us on to our fifth and final negative point. The fact that the expectations are sky high for Robert Downey Jr. to do justice for the Doctor Doom character. He did justice for Tony Stark for years and years within the MCU, but the fact is, if he doesn't live up to the hype and doesn't live up to what people expect from the Doctor Doom live action character within the MCU, it could lead to backlash, it could lead to a negative stain on Robert Downey Jr.'s kind of MCU tenure, if you like, and it could end up just biting Marvel in the ass, and it could be a whole kind of backlash and just a huge, huge mess if the Doctor Doom character isn't written well or doesn't come off well with the MCU main-going audience. So there we have it, guys. That's my 5 positive points and 5 negative points regarding Robert Downey Jr.'s casting of Doctor Doom. Is this an absolute genius piece of casting, a genius piece of marketing to get the MCU back on track, or is it just a desperate attempt to kind of revive a dead and dying MCU? Guys, throw it off to you. Jump down in the comment section, let me know your thoughts, comments and opinions. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that have very strong thoughts, comments or opinions about this piece of news. The internet is ablaze with debate about what's going on here with Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe as always, and I will see you in the next one.